Hello and welcome to Macstaff Live, and thank you for joining us today. If you work for a hiring company that is struggling to recruit the right staff in the current climate, you come to the right place today because we're going to be discussing some of the mistakes that hiring companies make, and not only could that damage them in the short term, but can damage their brand in the long term. And I'm joined by just the person to discuss this with 2 decades in the sector, Macstaff MD Anthony McCormack. And welcome as ever. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks. Hi, Martin. Thanks for having me, and thanks everybody for kind of joining to listen in. Yeah, it's looking back over some horror stories. There's the good, the bad, and the ugly, obviously in recruitment and recruitment processes. So yeah, it's just a good time for companies to have a think about how candidate centric or how friendly their process is, because it's a war for talent at the moment. It's not easy to hire for pretty much any positions, from what I can gather.
Yeah, we did actually part one of this a few weeks ago, and had such a good reaction that we've popped back on for some more. 3 weeks later, back then we discussed application forms, the lack of feedback from people, but just summarise in a few minutes what we've already discussed, and we'll make sure we pop the link to that video in the comments below on this video. And while I'm talking about that, just a reminder: if you've not already to subscribe to Macstaff Live, hit that subscribe button, and the notification bell will inform you of any future broadcasts we've got coming up. So, Anthony, over to you for a few minutes, and what can people look for in that part one if they're interested and missed it?
Yeah, absolutely. We had to return for like what you call in part duh, didn't we? Because there's just so many mistakes that companies are making at the moment, and with the best will in the world, like it's it takes deliberate effort to kind of try and be objective and kind of look at critically at your own kind of process and habits, doesn't it? But yeah, candidates like a nice, transparent, quick, easy, ideally enjoyable, definitely informative recruitment process. So is yours kind of fitting that description? Really, they don't like lack of information, be it about kind of salaries or the process. They don't like lots of hoops to jump. It's really difficult for candidates if there's too much time or effort to be invested in the process. If there's too many stages, good candidates are most discerning, and they drop out the quickest, or they just won't kind of take part in an onerous recruitment process. They want to partner and potentially join companies where it's friendly, engaging, they feel welcome, answers come easily, and they can perceive themselves working there. So it's a buyer's market from that point of view. Like, companies need to raise their game and bring everything to the table that they offer, in terms of the job and the salary and the compensation and the benefits and the progression and really everything that's going to be needed to attract the best of the best candidates, basically.
Sure. And while the situation with the UK economy is dominated by a chat of rising inflation, which I think now is up to over 9%, things haven't changed a great deal in terms of the employment market, where there are still a lot of jobs and not enough candidates. Am I correct?
That's right. Yeah. So we call it all of the above: a labour shortage, a skills shortage, and a talent shortage in recruitment. It's all sectors, all locations in the UK, and I think kind of pretty much same story in North America and EMEA as well. So yeah. Companies are still in a what you might call a war for talent.
Sure.
So they need to differentiate themselves as employers. They need to showcase the positions and really make the process candidate centric. That's lots of talk in the market about the candidate experience or the candidate journey, and you want to map one that's fit for purpose, basically, that's going to be attractive to discerning candidates, and that, as you were saying at the beginning, has a longer term kind of spin-off benefit, or otherwise, then, in terms of your employer branding, how you're perceived in the market as a prospect employer. So it's worth kind of deliberately kind of working on that kind of reputation and keeping your brand as an attractive one, which helps obviously then literally attract and draw people towards you, rather than kind of repelling. And you don't have to then use the blunt instrument of paying the most in order to get the best people. They probably want to join you anyway.
Yeah, yeah. We're going to be talking about lots of tasty things a bit later on, and all of these are based on Anthony's experience in the industry and with Macstaff more recently. And they'll include today things like inappropriate questions that get asked, and we'll talk about backdoor references and rescinded offers and all that sort of stuff. So some tasty stuff coming up, but we'll
you're stressing me out already.
He's got a cold sweat coming up there, and we'll start with a lack of clarity on the role, which has been something that I guess you hear quite a lot from people. So, how much of that is an issue at the moment?
Yeah, always an issue, and especially so when people are being, and rightly so, discerning in terms of the things that they apply for, then the things that they choose to actually interview for, and the things that they would potentially accept as a best career option or move for them. So yeah, they may be put off at the advert stage, or certainly the interview stage if there's just that lack of detail or lack of reassurance as to the full scope of the duties and responsibilities. And quite often what happens is when a company needs to hire the position again, they just like drag out the job spec from when they hired the position like 2-3 years ago, knock up an advert and try and recruit from there. And think a lot might have changed, like and that HR may not be aware of, or the marketing department that put the post together. So when the candidate sits in front of the hiring manager and they seem to be describing kind of quite a different scenario, or like just throwing on a load of extra things that they need or want doing, then it's just incongruous. It creates that slight disparity, which gives a level of uncertainty to the candidate and nerves them slightly. People are risk averse, like by nature, so you're looking for a good move, aren't you? But you're also more to the point making sure you don't make a bad move. So if there's any little red flags or uncertainties, that can genuinely put good candidates off. So best thing to do is to make sure that the job specification is rediscussed, bang up to date, that the job posting accurately relates to the job spec, even if it doesn't include all the stuff, and make sure that the hiring manager and the HR team are on the same page as to what the job spec, but also what the person spec is, and is that realistic as well. For what can be a 20-25k position, sometimes it's a laundry wish list of requirements from the client, which just isn't going to happen. And I suppose while we're at it, that has a impacts if you're advertising an unrealistic spec of reducing the people that apply, but also it changes the demographic of the people who apply as well. Like it's statistically true that males will apply for things if they meet 50-60% of the criteria, but females tend to be wanting to check they meet 90 or 100% of the criteria before they apply. So yeah, careful what you put out there in the first place. Yeah, it might have unseen consequences.
And certainly in this current climate, it's the hiring company's job to really do make sure they get this right, because they are essentially selling a position, aren't they? And the attention to detail that they put in that is part of the attraction for a potential candidate that might apply for it. So taking that small amount of time potentially to make sure they get the wording right and to completely very accurate in what they're writing really is important.
Yeah, and that definitely goes for the advertising stage, where you should be on brand in terms of your general company brand, but also in line with your employer brands. Making sure that you're coming across as a a good choice employer, and that the information's provided and transparent as to what the person can expect about the job, but also ideally about the recruitment process. It's not in a way that is where most of the problem occurs, though. I think it's the disparity in between what's advertised and then what is discussed at the interview. So the hiring manager being either just naturally good or properly trained to be able to sell the opportunity. We're probably coming on to this, but it's a two-way street. When somebody comes for an interview, Mr. Candidate is looking to find out all about the company, about the job, about the responsibilities, the projects, the prospects, and things like that. so whilst the Mr. Client is looking to find out, what are the qualifications, experience, characteristics, strengths and weaknesses and things like that of the candidate, they must deliberately, or they should deliberately, make sure that there's kind of time and focus equally on the what the candidate wants to know as well, because then it's that nice two-way street to partnership. You having a business meeting basically to try and work out, is this a win-win scenario? Like, is it a good long-term match? And it should be, like, well, it is as much in the employer's interest to make sure that the opportunity suits the candidate as well as that the candidate suits the job, basically.
And let's seamlessly move on to that issue of one-way comms in certain situations where the discussion, as you talked about, you said it's a two-way street. So often on these videos, I've lost count, but just explain why where problems can occur if it's not a two-way street in that interview process.
Yeah. So in general, and as relevant to this, I suppose it's whether the process is enjoyable. They like the candidate likes the hiring manager, whether they perceive themselves working there. So if it's an unpleasant experience, maybe that feels a bit like a grilling, then it's a turn off and they won't continue with the process, or ultimately kind of join the company if offered. But also kind of like I was saying a minute ago, or expanding on what I was saying a minute ago, if you don't get everything out in the open, if you don't have that open discussion about what are the true nuts and bolts of the responsibilities, what are the expectations, what are the unpleasant bits about the role, what other things do you have to cover, what are the peaks in workload during the year, what's their expectations for overtime or travel and things like that. If you don't allow the candidate to talk about or ask about the things that they're interested in and that they may be concerned about, then the research isn't complete. Basically, there's not enough dialogue, there's not enough information changed hands for somebody to make a really well-educated decision to join, which is what a discerning candidate is going to need to do before they make what is hopefully a long-term commitment.
Yeah, and you touched on it. We touched on it earlier, just in that moment there, about problems with the hiring manager, and we were talking about a company having to sell not only a role through their adverts and their wording, but also through the person that represents the company during this interview process. So it's really important that the hiring manager is somebody that can relate to anybody that comes in for an interview, I guess.
Yeah, the person's the hiring manager or the person interviewing is an ambassador for the company, definitely. So it's always worth a bit of self-reflection to make sure that you're up to the job in that moment, sort of thing. So a bit of preparation goes a long way, obviously. Just the little things like make sure that the room's booked, so you're not having to like turf somebody else out of the interview room to get started. Like there's not it's a clean, well-appointed room. I mean, your building is what it is, obviously, but if you think of kind of what it's like selling your house, then you're going to want to just showcase it in the best light, make it look like a or as best as it can a decent working environment, because it's like the things that aren't part of the actual sitting down having the interview are still part of the process, and that cuts both ways. Like so it's what you see of the hiring manager, how they relate to the receptionist. Are they late? Are they stressed? Like, do they seem to even like their job? Like, are they thinking about leaving? The candidate is
every minute counts, doesn't it? It proves that every minute counts. Whilst you open that door, it's not just this sitting down and right, we're going to begin this process. It's everything around it.
Yeah, it's showtime. So the candidate's evaluating everything that they see about the person and the team and the building and the company and so on. And likewise, the hiring manager, is perhaps making kind of value judgments about the candidate from how they see them kind of park in the car park, relate to the receptionist, the small talk, the handshake. It's all part of the decision-making process, and quite often the employers forget like their part in that, and they need to take a breath and make sure that they're well prepared for the interview, to be welcoming, to deliberately have that kind of rapport with the candidates. I mean, an example is, when candidates have said to me, it's a bit odd, especially at the beginning, like it was clear that, the manager hadn't read my CV until I sat down in front of him. And quite often you literally get that scenario where and they're thinking, like, who have I got sat in front of me? And they're like quickly leafing through, like wondering what to ask, and then just bluntly like, well, can you tell me about yourself?
Nowhere near good enough.
No, so you're going to want to like look at the CV in advance, like maybe think of, areas of rapport or interest that you've got about them, be it, same school, same hobbies or whatever, put them at their ease. Think of specific kind of questions that you might want to ask, like, can you tell me a bit more about that project, because that's relevant, or I know that I really rate your ex-employer, like I worked there myself, and I like this, but what did you think about the culture? And that then you've kind of warmed up the scenario, warmed up the candidate, that they're kind of friendly, relaxed. They'll then share more information more fully thereafter. But yeah, if you're kind of looking at it from a purely, let's get this candidate in, sit them down, like put the spotlight on them, like give them a grilling and then get them out of there as fast as I can, then you could argue that's efficient, but it's not going to be effective, like in terms of your ratios. Like good companies want to measure things like what's their number of applicants per job, what's the number of interviews that they kind of managed to get for suitable candidates against each advert, and then like what kind of ratio of offers are accepted as well. Because if you want to put your offers to acceptance ratio down the toilet, it's like give a candidate a bad interview experience. And there's plenty of horror stories, that's for sure. And it's just one of those things, isn't it? It's like interview is the thing that happens behind closed doors, so nobody really knows like what goes on and what's said. And some people might think they're doing a good job, but maybe they're doing a good job like for the 1980s sort of thing, and they might need a bit of a refresh.
And talking the 1980s and maybe 1970s, that's another seamless segue into the problem of inappropriate questions that get asked at interviews, which we were talking before we came on today on YouTube, that it still exists, and still some people are asking offensive questions at interview, which clearly won't do themselves or the company brand or their hopes of hiring the person who may be in that room any good whatsoever.
No, it's not good. Like it's 2022 people, let's keep it professional, basically. So I mean, HR have made good and good companies in general have made great strides in terms of professionalizing what is and isn't acceptable in an interview, and then in in a job and employment as well. So things have definitely moved forward, but especially in the absence of HR oversight on a process, and with SME companies and where you're speaking to the owner and things like that, they quite often take that kind of point of view of I say what I like and I like what I say sort of thing, and it is what it is. I mean, and there's as many kind of inappropriate kind of lines of questioning as there is potential kind of groups that are discriminated against, basically. But I try and give like a one fairly vanilla example, because some of them don't bear repeating. But hiring managers have asked candidates that I've been in dialogue before, whether they're finished popping babies out now. And I think that's the exact quote, but there's lots of companies that might try and find out whether they're trying to cover a future mat leave and things like that. But it's not, it's not on. And my advice, like, would be, same as, actually, this is like my life advice, not just interview advice, but it's like, don't like say something that you don't want to be in the newspaper the next day. And more to the point, in this kind of day and age, that you don't want to go, don't say or do something that you don't want to go viral on social media. And
and that's a very realistic possibility these days as well.
Not like it doesn't happen, is it? Like with people with perhaps perfectly valid obviously concerns and complaints, but just people with an axe to grind as well. It's you don't want to get dragged into a situation with your personal career, or just your company's brand identity and all that through careless or unprofessional interview conduct. Like both ways, basically. So awkward.
Yeah, very orcs. Let's talking of orcs, let's move on to backdoor references and rescinded offers, and that's been something that's you've had plenty of experience, especially during the COVID period.
Yeah, so I mean that's two different kinds of like difficult or unprofessional kind of employer behavior, which is kind of standard or traditionally accepted in the industry, really, isn't it? One is that backdoor references thing. People put either their references, don't they, on the bottom of the CV, and we've debated this in other lives as to which is the best way to go, like, or you put references available on request. So the professional, like, above board, on the record way to do that is to say, I'm taking your references now to help as part of our recruitment or decision making process, and you go to the people that the candidate approves that you speak to. But obviously, in reality, they're chosen as the referees for a reason. They're probably the best ones, or the ones that are pre-briefed or prepaid sometimes to come up with the goods. And kind of half joking, but what can actually happen in reality is like, I bet I know somebody who knows that person. I bet I can get the inside track, the real story, and they start asking about, which is and I don't 90% of the time get to find out about this, because if they ask me whether they can take references that are not on the list, of course I say no. But if they don't ask me, I don't obviously find out necessarily what's happened. But that kind of I don't know whether it's too strong a word, but that kind of betrayal of trust of the candidate will not be kind of soon forgotten if word gets back, and somebody says, like, why was so and so ABC company asking about you then? Are you applying for a job there, or like what's going on? And it can just put the dampeners on what might have actually been a perfectly valid move. The candidate's not going to risk it now. They might kind of shut down their job search, like, for fear of being found out, and both parties lose in that situation.
Not great.
I think it's just the clients are sometimes just, I suppose, wanting to control the situation, or just have, it's like an I know something you don't know sort of thing. It's kind of childish in a way, but they want to find out a little bit kind of more, dig the dirt, have something to gossip about, things like that. It's but do resist that temptation. It's not cool.
Does it happen? Is it still happening more than we think?
I'm sure it happens all the time, and it's it's difficult to prove or legislate against, because it's like, what's a reference at the end of the day? Like, is it just informally asking a friend what they think of said person? Doesn't mean that you're breaching their confidence that they're applying for a job. It could just be a curious question for whatever reason. So it's difficult to kind of prove or punish. But I think it happens. It's if we were to flip over and look at it from the hiring manager or company's point of view, it's like, why wouldn't you like ask some good curious questions and just try and avoid hiring somebody who's going to be a future problem, like, when you could just ask a couple of trusted confidants.
Sure.
And quite often, if something seems to be going quickly from the candidate point of view, and then things go cold, like it's dead air or whatever, it might be I don't want to make you feel paranoid, but it might be that there's been an unfavorable reference or conversation happened, like, behind your back about you, which is, of course, like, unfair. And it's like ask an unqualified person, get an unqualified answer, isn't it? So the person may feel like they've got some useful information, but it might just be from another person with sour grapes or an axe to grind.
Exactly.
They left that employer previously because it wasn't a good place to work, or something like that. So I prefer to make my own mind up, to be fair, about people. I often won't take references, because I know that they always come with baggage. Like it's, you know, everybody's got their own angle. I prefer to trust my own opinion. Thanks very much. But you know,
well,
I'm
that's the
just
way
a
to
bit
do
like
it,
that,
because there's so much untrustworthy information out there at the moment, isn't there? It's I think it's always the best way to do it now, and that's just make your own opinions and take what you read or hear with a grain of salt here and there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's about what we. It's like what we consume, you know, from the mainstream media, or you know, or on social media channels, isn't it? It's like, yeah, what's the source? You know,
Yeah.
what's the angle there? Like, you know, are they impartial? Is it valid? Is it trustworthy information or not? And you know, your approved references should be the go-to thing. They should be selected because they're the most relevant kind of expert witness to your ability to do that job, and that's what the references should be pulled in for.
Sure.
Like, or, you know, as that expert witness or like second opinion, not as, you know, just like a source of like gossip or criticism.
And I could talk to you all day about this stuff, but we've run out of time, unfortunately, now.
No
So
way.
we're gonna call it a day, and just remind anyone that's watching and hasn't subscribed to the YouTube channel to take a moment out of your time to do so. It really helps us. And any comments you can pop in below are always very, very welcome. Any questions you may have to Anthony, please feel free to pop them in the comments box below. And you'll also find there a link to part 1 of this discussion about mistakes that hiring employers make down in the comments below too, if you'd like to have a look at that and see what you've missed. You can find out more about Macstaff and Anthony on macstaff.co.uk. Follow Ant on all the socials across Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And see you on here next time. It just leaves me, Martin Crowson, to say thank you very much to Ant as ever for your time. Thanks, Ant. That's great stuff today.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah, thanks everybody. I can get down off my high horse now, can't I?
It's a very easy job sitting here on a YouTube channel, isn't it?
Yeah, so yeah, do watch part 1 and some of the other stuff, and I look forward to cracking on with the next one soon.
And if you've got any stories as well that you'd like to share with us, again, please pop them in the comments box below. But that's it from us today. Thank you so much once again for joining in and taking the time to join us here on Macstaff Live. We'll catch you again soon. From me, Martin Crowson, it's goodbye. And from Anthony,
Goodbye.
thanks, folks. Bye.